Okay, well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for sharing this time with me. Tell us your name and what do you do?
My name is Lora Livingston. I am the judge of the 261st District Court for the courts of Travis County, Texas. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for this honor.
So tell us what you do on a daily basis.
Well, I'm laughing because the answer to that question is incredibly complicated, I will say, in the last year and a half or so. Before the pandemic, I would describe my work as going into the office, presiding over court proceedings, sitting up on a bench that's higher in the room than everybody else, with all the theatrics that come along with being in a courtroom. And now, in the last more than 18 months now, I have been at home Zooming like everybody else working from home these days. And so I have a virtual courtroom. I have essentially a robe that is about half the length of my regular robe, so I don't trip over it as I navigate my house. And so it's a very different sort of logistical setup, but the work is really the same. What I do as a judge is that I preside over disputes. I hear everything from asbestos to zoning, I like to say, from A to Z. I might hear a car accident one day, I might hear a medical malpractice case the next day, the next case might be a divorce, the next case might be a property dispute, a personal injury. It just any number of civil and family disputes come before me, and I do my best to try to resolve them in a way that's civilized, fair, and just.
Where were you born and raised?
I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I went to school there, and after a couple of years at one school, I transferred back home to California and graduated from UCLA. And then I also graduated from the UCLA Law School. And then I was pursuing a fellowship program that led me to Austin. And I thought maybe I'd be in Austin a year or two. When the fellowship was over, I thought I'd take off, but I didn't. I ended up staying in Austin, and I've now been here almost 40 years.
Wow. How did you get into law? And how did you know you always wanted to be a lawyer and a judge?
I really didn't always know I wanted to be a lawyer, and I never imagined that I would be a judge. It's really interesting that my career has taken off in the way that it has, because it was not like some other people that I know. It was not a lifelong dream of mine. When I was in high school, and even in the early days of college, I actually was very interested in becoming a photojournalist. I love taking pictures. I love photography. I like to read. I like to write. I like to travel. And so putting all of those interests together made photojournalism a really attractive profession. My dream was that I would travel the world and learn about other people and other cultures, and report back on what I'd learned and what I'd experienced in these faraway lands. And I'd write about it, and I'd take pictures, and I would tell stories. And turns out that I started telling stories of a different kind when I got into law, because let's face it, trying a lawsuit is all about storytelling. The plaintiff tells the plaintiff's story, the defendant tells the defendant's story, and somewhere in the middle of that, we find the truth. And so my job now as a judge is to be the one person in the room that is looking for that truth, looking for that solution, right? Not just focused on one side or the other, but really trying to understand as best I can what is the truth, what makes the most sense, what is the most closely aligned with the law, what will give us a just outcome. And so in some ways, my interest in storytelling was something that turned out to be something I could transfer into a profession in the law. But it was not something that I'd sort of grown up dreaming about. It really came to me later in life, when I was inspired by the work that other people were doing in legal arenas, most especially when I was growing up in LA. There was a lot of police brutality, particularly in minority communities. And so there were groups of lawyers in that community that were representing people, suing police departments, suing for change, suing for just outcomes for individual clients. But really, really what attracted me was the work they were doing around systemic change. And I just became enamored with the notion that I could be a part of something that would make a difference in that way. And so I became a lawyer.
What do you like most about your job?
Well, I think what I like most about my job is that I really do get to be the one person in that room that is completely 100% focused on a solution, right? I enjoyed advocacy when I was an advocate. I loved cross-examination. I loved direct examination where I would sort of get my client to tell their story. It was compelling if you did it right. It was theatrical in some ways, but it was also really moving and important and meaningful. Now, though, as a judge, my role is even more important, as I see it at least, because I get to be the one person in that room that is 100% focused on trying to find a just outcome to a very complicated solution, to a very complicated problem. So I really am looking for the right solution for a very complicated set of circumstances. And I like that challenge.
So how do you show up as a Black woman, a lawyer and judge?
Well, if you know me, you know that you kind of get what you see, right? Like I don't, I'm not good at pretending to be someone or something that I'm not. I come as I am, and you get what I have to offer, and rough edges and all. And so I show up in the way that I talk about my own experiences. I show up in the way that I understand the experiences of those that come in front of me, particularly when their experiences are ones that are familiar to me because of the struggle that I recognize in their lives, and how familiar that struggle is when I think back about my own life. And so I show up authentically. I show up genuinely. And I think that comes through in the way that I relate to the people who come in front of me, in the way that I manage my dockets, in the way that I work through issues and problems in the cases that I'm assigned. And so, you get me every time you show up in front of me. You're going to get the same me, right? You might get the sad me, or the laughing me, or the serious me, but you'll always get the authentic me.
Are you the only African-American woman district court judge?
No, I'm the first African-American district court judge in Travis County. I'm the first woman. Judge Wilt Flowers came before me. He was the first African-American male on the district court bench in Travis County. Now Judge Cliff Brown is over on the criminal side where Judge Flowers was. I'm happy to report that Judge Kennedy is over on the criminal side and has been for many years now the criminal presiding judge. And so our numbers have multiplied. Now joining me on the civil and family bench is Judge Aurora Martinez-Jones. She's joined me as a district court judge colleague. And so our numbers are growing in the civil and the criminal district courts here in Travis County. And I'm very, very proud of that. I'll tell you that when I was sworn in, I mentioned that I might be the first woman on the civil district bench, but I hoped not to be the last. And that dream, I'm happy to say, has come true because others have followed.
Awesome. What advice would you give your former self or your younger self?
What advice would I give my younger self? I would give my younger self so much advice. We probably don't have time. I'll summarize it this way. I would tell my younger self to be patient. I think that's the best advice I would give. I was impatient when I was younger because I was anxious for change. I wanted to see things change more quickly. I was impatient to rid injustice where I saw it. And while I still feel a sense of urgency about those things, I've learned over time that sometimes you can, if you're patient, maneuver the situation and set things up in a way that ultimately you get the result that you're really looking for, which sometimes is bigger than what you set out to do in the first place. And so I would be more strategic if I were giving advice to my younger self. I would be more patient. I would be more strategic in the way that I was approaching my goals. And I think I might have reached them perhaps just as fast, but perhaps with bigger impact if I'd been more strategic and patient about how I set about trying to reach those goals. There's nothing wrong with being impatient when you're trying to put an end to injustice. So I'm not suggesting we slow down in our efforts to fight for justice, but sometimes being strategic and patient about how to set it up just so is a valuable lesson that I think I've learned over time.
Well, being a judge is definitely a step above everybody else. So how did you transition from being a lawyer to, saying, okay, I'm gonna, and then in Texas, you have to actually, our judges are elected, correct?
Right. Yes,
So,
you have to run for office, and that of course presents its own set of challenges. The transition from being a lawyer to being a judge really is perhaps more different than what you're thinking about, maybe. I remember when I first walked into the building in the first days of being a judge, I'd walk to an elevator and I'd hear someone say, "Judge, judge," and I just kept walking because, I didn't imagine that they were speaking to me. And so there's that kind of getting used to your position sort of transition, right? There's the other transition when you're in the courtroom and someone says something that is incorrect, and you have the instinct, because you've been a litigator for a long time, you have the instinct to say objection. But of course, not your job to say that anymore, right? You're now the judge who's supposed to rule on objections. And so that transition is kind of interesting too, because you have to settle into the role that you are now in and shed your former role, right? So there's some fun transitions there. But while you sit as a judge, literally higher in the room than everyone else, you're really, if you do it right, you don't take advantage of that other than for what it means symbolically, right? Because if you believe that you are in some ways, because of your position, better than everyone else, you're not doing it right, in my view. You have to be able to relate to the people that are in front of you. You have to be able to relate to the circumstances that they find themselves in. You have to be able to relate and understand, even if you're not familiar with where they're coming from. You have to imagine the world they live in, right? Even if it's not your world, you have to imagine what their world is like for them, what led them to the decisions that they made, even if those were bad decisions, right? And so you have to be able to relate, and you have to be empathetic, you have to be sympathetic, you have to care about what is going on in the lives of those people that are coming before you. You can't do your job, I don't think, as a judge, unless you are ready, willing, and able to appreciate the circumstances of the people who come in front of you. So you can't imagine yourself higher up, meaning better off. You must imagine yourself simply sitting up there symbolically in order to remind people that your job is to try to find a resolution, not be a goddess, right? You don't know everything. You certainly aren't the smartest one in the room, but you are the one at that moment in that situation who's charged with the responsibility of doing the right thing.
I have a few questions that I got from Tim Ferriss. He interviews a lot of folks on his podcast. And one of the questions is, what purchase of $100 or less has positively impacted your life over the last 6 months or recent memory?
A really good ink pen. A really good ink pen. And I'll say that because it has a very practical meaning, but it also has a very sort of political meaning, maybe, if I can describe it that way. I'll tell you what I mean. Practically, I use a pen a lot, right? I take copious notes when I'm listening to cases and trying cases in my courtroom. So I literally need a really good pen. But I also, when I teach newer judges at the College for New Judges, one of the things I tell them is that they have a lot of power in that ink pen. And they ought to take that power very seriously because they never want to abuse it. And so the ink pen for me represents not only the practical use of it, but also the power that that ink pen represents in terms of what I attach my signature to. My ink pen and my signature have a lot of power. I can make people pay money. I can put people in jail, right? I can declare a law unconstitutional with my ink pen. So my ink pen serves me in both this very pedestrian way, using it to take notes and you know, write things down. But it also has this incredible power when I affix my signature with that ink pen to a document that has the power of the law behind it. So I think that less than $100 purchase for me is the power and the practicality of a really good ink pen.
That's good. How has failure, a challenge, or apparent failure set you up for later success?
Well, you have to learn from your mistakes. If you're not learning, first of all, there is no way you're not going to make a mistake, right? You are, as a human being, bound to make a mistake, more than one in the same day sometimes. So if you're smart about it, right, what you want to do is learn from the mistakes that you've made. Mistakes are inevitable. Learning from them is a gift. And so you must learn from the mistakes that you make. You must find a way not to repeat them. You must also find a way to use them to teach others to avoid the mistakes that you've made, to the extent that you can do that. That's in part what mentorship is all about, right? But learning how to overcome the mistakes that you've made, the challenges that you've faced, but also finding a way forward is really where the challenge is. And if you can meet that challenge, you'll be okay.
If you had if there was a gigantic billboard anywhere in the world and you could get a message to millions or billions of people, what would that message be?
Kindness is everything.
Why? Why is that?
I think because if you believe that and if you live into that, everything else will work out. If you are kind, it means you have the capacity for love. If you are kind, it means you have the capacity for compassion. If you are kind, you have the capacity to give. If you are kind, you have the capacity to take care of others. It's a pathway, it seems to me. Kindness is a pathway to everything that might be good in our world. And so I feel like a lot of things sort of find their way to and through kindness. So I think that's what I'd put on the billboard if I only had one. Now, if you're going to give me more than one, I could do other things. But if I only had one, I think that's what I'd put.
So this is a fun one that I like. What's an unusual habit or absurd thing that you love?
I would never tell you the answer to that question.
You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to. I've heard some really good ones.
Well, those people are not elected officials, I imagine, and they're perhaps braver than I. But
okay, I'll give you some. I'll give you an example.
I'll tell you this.
Okay.
I'll say it this way. I would have to confess to you that I'm really a boring person because I don't really do any things that are all that absurd, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I'm a judge. I'm a rule follower.
Everything is relative, though.
I paint within the lines when I'm told to paint within the lines. And so absurdity for me is outside my comfort zone. So I honestly, I'm too boring to do anything absurd.
I'm gonna let you off the hook on that one. What is
persuaded you that that's the right course of action?
Say again?
I said, I must be a good lawyer. I persuaded you that is the right course of action.
Well, you don't have any more you're retiring, so you don't have any more elections. So you could say what you want.
But I'm still boring. So, I mean,
What
I really don't do many things that are absurd, really. I mean,
unusual?
I
Everything's
really,
relative, though. Everything's
I'm
relative.
sorry.
Everything's relative.
Well, okay. I'll grant you that.
There's a couple gummy bear addictions, obsessive compulsion of cleaning. What's another one?
Wow.
Yeah, there is some other ones I can't put out there. I promise I would never share.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Confidentiality is important in my line of work.
Very good.
But really, I really I really don't do very many things that are absurd. I really don't.
That's
I'm a rule follower. Come on.
that's a good thing. What have you gotten better at saying no to over the last few years?
Committee work. I get invited to participate in a lot of really great and wonderful causes. And I'm so tempted because I'm compelled by the stories that they tell, the mission that they're on, the change they want to see in the world. And so that I'm really drawn to participating in and helping in any way I can advance the goals of some really great organizations. But my time is limited in terms of what I can contribute. My job limits my ability to really do some sort of fundraising or advocacy. I can't, there's so much that I can't do that would be helpful to an organization. And so I have to learn to say no, and I have learned to say no to being involved in some really great causes.
When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, how do you get back to center?
Well, I spend time breathing. Honestly, I stop and take a deep breath and remind myself that I've got to reset. That what I need to do is focus on right now, and then I can't worry about the things I've left undone or the things that are yet to be, taken care of tomorrow. Right now, it's important that I just stop, focus, breathe, and get back to a starting point. Because I tell people all the time, it's like they tell you on airplanes, when the yellow mask comes down because you need you to find some oxygen, you put your mask on first before you can help others. So I feel the same way about sort of when I've had a fairly hectic or chaotic, almost frantic experience, that having lived through that, it's time to sort of stop, focus, take a deep breath, breathe, right? And get back to center. And then when you're ready, you'll be better able to tackle whatever the challenge is that you must face next. So I'd say breathe.
How has a failure, challenge, or apparent failure set you up for later success?
You just asked me that question.
Did I? I'm getting
Yeah.
tired. I've only done like 6 of these over the last 6 hours.
That's all right.
So how do you give back to the community?
Well, I've tried to give back to this community over the years in many different ways. I've served on a number of boards and commissions and committees. I'm continuing to serve on some community impact work that's really important to me. I've served on organizations that are both faith-based as well as nonprofit civic organizations. And I've done so because the group's mission was important to me, but also because I thought it was work that would be meaningful and important to add something good to the community. I think that's really important. I've received a lot from the community that I've lived in, and I want to give back. I want to contribute something meaningful back into the community that has served me so well over the years. And I want to be a really vibrant and giving member of the community that I live in. And so it's important, I think, to give back. And so I feel like my service to the community is an obligation on the one hand, but also a lot of fun and fulfilling for me personally. So that's how I've done it. I've been involved in lots of community groups.
What life lessons have you learned?
uh, I'm still working on life lessons. So let me be clear that I think that education is a process. I think that you're never too old to learn. And I think that education evolves over time, right? So when you say what life lessons have I learned, I would say first and foremost, I'm still learning them. But some of the things that I've learned so far are that I need to be more patient. I sometimes get to where I think we ought to be going faster than others. And if that happens, I have to remember that just because they're not there yet doesn't mean they're not going to be able to get there. And it's my job to help them get there, assuming it's a place we all want to go. And so I just have to be patient as I'm waiting for them to get to the same place, right? And so I've learned that patience really is a virtue and that it serves me well, both in my professional life, but also in my personal life, right? When you're dealing with people in the grocery store, when you're dealing with, the many lines you have to stand in, whether that's the line to vote or the line to get ice cream, patience comes in handy daily. And so I've learned that patience really is a virtue. And I, as cliche as it sounds, it's cliche because it's true in my experience. So I think I've learned to be patient over time. I've learned that compassion is not a weakness. I've learned that it takes a really strong person to be compassionate and to care about somebody else. And so those are some of the sort of meaningful life's lessons that I guess I've learned over time.
My dog is barking at the neighbors. What's your superpower?
What is my superpower? I don't know what my superpower is. It's not something that I have a ready-made answer to. I think if I have a superpower, and I don't know that I have one, but if I have a superpower, I think maybe it is my capacity for understanding. I try very, very much to be understanding of everyone and everything around me. I try to understand what's going on so that I can try to help find a solution. So I think if I have a superpower, perhaps it is my capacity for understanding.
Do you have kids?
I have two awesome and wonderful stepkids and two beautiful, beautiful grandsons.
How do you think they'll remember you?
Well, the grandsons are going to remember me for tickling, mostly. I'm the master tickler. And so I think they'll remember that. They'll remember that I made them laugh. They'll remember me as a lot of fun to hang out with. I think the kids will remember me as kind and loving and willing to help them when they needed it.
What is your purpose?
My purpose in life, you mean? What is my purpose in life? Well, that's an interesting question. So sometimes I feel like my purpose in life is really grand and global. And sometimes I feel like my purpose in life is really small and almost tiny. And sometimes I feel like my purpose is really immediate. And sometimes I feel like my purpose is really long term. So I don't know that I feel like I have a singular purpose, right? I think that, and maybe this is a sort of a function of my own view about faith, but I think sometimes my purpose in this moment is to be the right person at the right time with the right thing to say or do in that moment. But sometimes I think that my purpose has a more long-term effect. So the answer to that is not as simple as it seems. I think it's a much more complicated answer, because I think as we move through life and we encounter different people and we find ourselves in different circumstances, our purpose might change. Today, my purpose might be to say absolutely nothing when someone else is speaking, but tomorrow my purpose might be to be the one who is speaking and not listening as much. I think your purpose changes as you find yourself in different situations, or at least I think that's true for me.
How do you want people to remember you?
I want people to remember me fondly.
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered fondly. I want people to reflect on my time on earth and my experiences with them, to bring a smile to their face, to make them feel warm, and I want it to have been a good experience for them.
Who's your favorite person?
I don't have one favorite person. I really don't. I have a lot of favorite people, and I have a lot of, it's like somebody asked me about my favorite food or my favorite ice cream flavor, to have just one would be dull and boring in my mind. And I confess that I can be a little dull and boring at times, but diversity, variety, spice, water, like, I think it's important to appreciate the variety that we get to encounter as a human being. That's true in terms of the relationships we have with other people, the books we read, the music we listen to, the foods we eat, the experiences we seek out, right? Just to pick one, way too limiting for me. So I don't have a favorite person.
What are you most proud of?
Surviving.
Explain.
I'm most proud of surviving because I think that in the 21st century, survival is huge. We have been through not just this pandemic on a global scale, but we survived traffic, we survived random shootings, we survived brutality and abuse, we survived bad political decisions, we survived polluted air and water. I mean, it is not easy. In a lot of ways, it's not easy to enjoy life when you think about all the challenges that being alive, right, requires you to face. It's surviving is tricky. So I think I'll say survival. At least that's how I'm feeling today. That answer could be different tomorrow, but today I'm going with survival.
So when you hear Travis County Court or anything with the law, you hear your name, or people hear your name a lot. How are you using your platform and your power for good?
Oh, wow. Well, I think, others might disagree. I think when you think about it, it's sort of a legacy question, right? I think your legacy is determined not only by what you think about that, but what other people think about that. So I don't think you get to be the master of that. But I'll tell you what makes me proud about it, and what makes me excited about the platform I have, the position that I'm in, the positions I've held, and my ability to make a difference and have some influence over some things. I can talk about that. Others might see those things differently, but for me, I'll give you just a few examples. I am one of a group of people that have made it possible for, I don't even know how many now, young law students that are diverse law students to have positions in courts and with law firms in a summer fellowship program for first-year law students that didn't exist before we started the program. It's now 10, 12 years old. When I was going to law school, the second year and the third year students really always got the summer positions, right? And the first year students are sort of scrambling. And so we created this program for first year law students, and it has, I'm so proud of it. It's exceeded my expectations in terms of its ability to give experience and exposure to courts, to judges, to top law firms in our community, to political entities and agencies that employ lawyers and find jobs for these kids once they graduate. I mean, it has been a fantastic program, and I'm very proud of the Diversity Fellowship Program that's sponsored by the Austin Bar Association. In my courthouse, I think it's fair to say, been the primary advocate for the Self-Help Center in Travis County, and that is my baby. I am most proud of the creation of a self-help center in this community that has helped hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of people in the almost 18, 19 years that it has been in existence. And I'm super excited about the work that we've been able to accomplish at the Self-Help Center, because we are providing legal information to people, whether they can afford it or not. Most come because they can't afford a lawyer, but it's open to everyone. And we are providing legal information where people had a hard time finding that information before we started the Self-Help Center. And so I think that's my number one sort of proudest accomplishment about the work I've been able to do and the influence that I've been able to have using my position as a judge to really make a difference in the community. It's the Self-Help Center. But, you know, we've made changes to the way we run our dockets. We've made some changes to, we've embraced technology in ways that some other communities haven't as much. You know, we've taken off in this virtual platform in ways that we couldn't have imagined 2 or 3 years ago. So I think sometimes they're sort of big changes, and sometimes they're fairly small and simple changes, but all with a goal toward making the experience at the courthouse better for the folks who need to come there to take care of business. So in ways big and small, I feel like I've been able to use my position and influence and frankly power for good.
Mhm.
And I'm really proud of that.
What's your favorite book or book you'd recommend?
There you go with just one. There's just not one.
A couple. Give me a couple.
You know, I'm in a book club. So my book club is 31 years old. We have read well over 300 books. I cannot just pick one. I cannot pick one. I could give you 10, but I don't know that I could give you one. Right?
Yeah, one of the folks told me it's whatever book I'm reading now.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not entirely true, because the one I'm reading now is really good, but it's very depressing. The one I read a month ago was a lot of fun, but it wasn't particularly intellectual, right? But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't a classic. You know, I've read some classics that I might want to read again because I enjoyed them so much. And some I don't even remember the title of, because they weren't worth really the effort to read it, right? Like I mean, you know, it's just not possible to give you one.
What's a couple that you would recommend that folks should read?
Well, see, I can't even say that I would recommend them to other people. Here's what I would say. I will say that there have been some really memorable books.
Mhm.
Um,
Give me a couple.
and what I want to say about the ones I'll give you right now are that I've read them more recently than I have read others. And so maybe that's why they're at top of mind right now. Um, I really enjoyed A Gentleman in Moscow. That was a fun book. I really enjoyed um, everything Amy Tan has ever written. I love Margaret Atwood. Um, I really loved Octavia Butler. Right. So I think more in terms of authors than books, although a couple of books, Ann Patchett's books are I think ones that I've enjoyed over time. Um, you know, The Warmth of Other Suns really warmed my heart in a lot of ways. I just I cannot give you just one.
Such a lawyer, man. Such a lawyer.
Memoirs of a Geisha. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was good.
You know?
What
Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. That was a good one.
what was the name of that one?
Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet.
Whoa, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, been some
What do you-
fun ones.
What do you enjoy doing in your leisure time?
What do I enjoy doing in my leisure time? Well, I like to go bowling. I don't do it as much as I used to. I like to go bowling. I'm just now getting into pickleball, so I'm learning how to play pickleball. Um, I like to bike ride and I like to hike.
So I heard you're retiring. So what's next?
Part-time work. So I'm retiring at the end of next year. So I still have a year and a few months left before my term ends, and so I'll be around until the end of 2022. After that, I hope that I will be able to spend more time with my grandkids and more time with my mother-in-law and my parents. My mother-in-law and my parents are in their mid 90s, mid to late 90s, and the grandkids are under 3. So I'm in that sandwich generation, and my goal after retirement is to spend as much time as possible with both of those other 2 generations.
That's a blessing.
Amen to that.
This is the last question. What does it mean to be chosen as one of our top 10 lawyers for 2021?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm incredibly honored to be chosen as a top anything, top 10, top 100, top 1,000. I think to be recognized by someone else on any list with other distinguished individuals is an honor, however large or small the list. So I'm honored, and I'm grateful, and I thank you for the recognition. I would also say, though, if I'm being honest, that while I am grateful and appreciate the recognition and the honor, there are many, many, many folks out in our community that are doing great work that also deserve recognition. Um, I don't know about the others on your list, but I can tell you it's certainly true for me. I don't do what I do in a vacuum, and I don't do what I do by myself. I have help, I have assistants, I have colleagues, I have people that I brainstorm with, that I bounce ideas off, people who bring me ideas that I can kind of run with, because I'm in a position to do so. But I just don't do what I do by myself. I have a loving husband who makes what I do out in the world possible because he sustains me at home. And so I don't do anything in my life by myself. And so while I'm the one being recognized on this list of top 10, and I am honored, but please understand that I am where I am and I am who I am because of others. And I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful to you for the recognition.
Well, that was my last question. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I don't think so. Good to see you.
I know. I was looking forward to it. Eric he was not any help with this list. And so he goes, well, just ask Judge Livingston to look it over. And I was like, God, I can't. She's she's like the top of the list.
Oh.
So he didn't know. So yeah.
Oh, well, that's so nice of you.
Yeah. No, it's I mean,
Oh, who's on your list, actually?
yeah,
Or is that public?
it is. Yeah, I'll send it over I'll text it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
And is this a virtual thing or?
no, so we're doing a gala and that was the thing. I think I had asked him to do the presentation. He goes, oh well, we'll get ask Judge Livingston. And I was like, I can't. And he goes, like, why? It was like, and I was like, so I didn't go further, but yeah, so it's like she can't present this year. But
I don't.
yes,
Am I even in town? When is it?
it's the 20th of November. It's the Saturday before Thanksgiving.
I think I'm here.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you there.
And where? I'm going to put it on here right now. Where is it?
It's the JW Marriott. And
The big one on Congress.
Yep, the JW.
What time?
Yep, on second. Yeah, second in
Yeah.
Congress, right?
What time?
6 o'clock. I'll send you out, and I'll send you the thing.
Yeah, you might have, but I've been traveling. I just got back from
Yeah.
a month. Top 10 or
Yeah, and we decided late to do it, and I mean, it was just, unfortunately, it was just it's one of those things where I know it's a lot of work for me, but it's important because some of the folks, a lot of times you guys, like, you're leaving, you're retiring, and there's some other folks who are actually leaving this year. So I mean, we published the list, and then some of the folks some have already transitioned to new jobs, and so it's been interesting. But it again gives us a snapshot in time, and so that's really what we're trying to do.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I will say that one of the things I really appreciate about what you're doing is that it brings so many people together that wouldn't ordinarily get together. And it's nice to be able to hear about what other people are doing and see what's going on in parts of the community we don't normally visit. I think that's cool. So I really appreciate it. Well, I've got it on my calendar, so
Good deal.
I think we're in town. I mean, the only thing that date is ringing a bell for some reason, but it's not on my calendar, so I don't know. But I got like 3 calendars, so what do I know? But I will do my best to be there. But send me some more information. I can make sure and buy tickets and whatever.
We'll do. All right. Well, looking forward to seeing you guys.
Well, take care of yourself. It's always a pleasure.
You too. I can't wait. All right. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.